Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I've learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. And I'm having a very enjoyable afternoon. It is so warm in Indiana today. I think it's about 90 degrees, and it's really like hot and muggy out here, but I'm like loving it. I was talking to my neighbors earlier. She's out there working right now. She's extending her yard so she can put more flowers out there. And I am uploading a video that I made for another channel. And so while that is uploading, I thought, why not make a Peterisms video? And so I was reading through the comments from the last couple days, and you guys have given me so much source material to discuss and respond to. But I actually picked two different comments that I got that I want to respond to today. But there was a ton of them, so I just want to say thank you so much. The videos that I love doing over here recently have been where I respond to your comments or questions that you guys leave, and I just have so much fun doing those. So thank you, I appreciate it. It's, you know, a really good way for me just to kind of like share my life experience and share what I've gone through. And y'all know I just consider myself a storyteller. I love telling stories of my life, and especially if maybe something that I've gone through can help somebody else. And I also learn from you guys. So the first part of this I think will probably be pretty quick. Somebody commented and said, because I was talking about different prayers of mine that I read, I've talked about that a lot on here. One of my favorite prayers, and I actually just read this for a cameo yesterday. Let me pull this up for you, because I love this one so much. I have it in my phone somewhere, but it's A New Day by Heart, Soul, Wilson, and it is a prayer, but I want to read it to you. Hold on just a second. Because it's funny, because in my cameo yesterday when I was reading this, I said, like, I don't know if you are a spiritual person or religious person, if you don't believe in prayer, just, you know, you can take out the God part of it, whatever. But this is something that when I worked in treatment, we used to do in our morning community every morning, that we would read this, and I have loved it ever since then. So, I mean, since I was probably, I don't know, you know, 24 years old, all the way till now, this is something I read often. I keep copies of it on my phone. Here, I'll screenshot it again, because I often go into my phone and I can't find it. So I just Google search it, because I know that the prayer was written by a guy named Heart, Soul, Wilson. So you can look it up. It's called The Beginning of a New Day, and it's by Heart, Soul, Wilson, H-E-A-R-T S-I-L-L, Wilson, W-I-L-S-O-N. And it goes like this. This is the beginning of a new day. God has given me this day to use as I will. Or you could say the universe, whatever. I can waste it or use it for good. What I do today is very important, because I am exchanging a day of my life for it. When tomorrow comes, this day will be gone forever, leaving something in its place I have traded for it. I want it to be a gain, not a loss, good, not evil, success, not failure, in order that I shall not regret the price I paid for it. And the reason that I want to read this to you is because I, you know, get asked this question a lot, because I talk about prayer and how I start my day and I end my day with prayer and meditation, you know, and a gratitude list and things like that. And a lot of people have asked me in my personal life and, you know, on YouTube, they'll say, I've gotten a lot of emails about it and DMs, like, well, I'm not a spiritual person, I'm not a religious person, so what do you suggest to somebody about prayer, since you're such a believer in prayer and that it helps you, to do if they don't believe in a higher power? Like my husband doesn't, right? But he very much believes in positive affirmation, you know? And I think that for me, if you read certain things like prayers and you take out keywords to you that I don't know, that you have issues with or whatever, like God or whatever, that you can't, that will help you. You know, it was interesting, because in this comment that I got, this person said, hold on just a second, what do you pray to if you don't believe in God? And somebody responded and said, good orderly direction, which is a recovery thing, because G-O-D, good orderly direction, the universe, or dogs. And, you know, I think the way that I look at it is, and I always tell people, is just remove the religious or the spiritual aspect out of the prayer, and then just use it as a positive affirmation, you know? For example, when you go through this Heart, Soul, Wilson thing, the beginning of a new day, it says in here, this is the beginning of a new day. God has given me this day to use as I will. You don't have to say, God has given me this day to use as I will. You can say, this is the beginning of a new day. The universe has given me this day to use as I will, right? Or you can say, I have this day to use as I will. You can completely take that out and make it, you know, non-religious, non-spiritual, or anything, and just use it as a positive affirmation. One of my favorite prayers that somebody that was in my aftercare group when I got sober, it's a very simple prayer. It's a prayer of gratitude. And I think they even made it up themselves. I don't know. I don't know if I've ever Google searched it, and if I have, I don't remember it. But it was, help me to want what I already have. You know, and it's implied when you're saying it as a prayer that you're saying to God, help me to want what I already have. But that could be to the universe. That could be a reminder. That could be just a positive affirmation. You know, Peter, help me to want what I already have. Like, remember to want what you already have. And I love that prayer so much because it keeps me grounded in gratitude, right? But like, it doesn't have to be a religious or a spiritual prayer. Most of the prayers that I do have some religious connotation to it. But it doesn't have to be that way, you know? And you can, listen, it's for you, right? Like, the reason I consider myself a spiritual person and not a religious person is because for me, it doesn't work to follow doctrine that other people have set forth for me. I'm not going to rule it out. If someday I find that and it works for me, I might do that, you know? But for my mom and other people out there that I know, like, following a set of rules or doctrine really worked for her and has worked for other people. And as long as it doesn't hurt people or come against people, I take no issue with that. You know, believe what you want to believe, and I'm highly supportive of my friends that are very religious or go to church on a regular basis and are very involved in their church, as long as their churches don't take stances that hurt other people, right? But for me, you know, I'm a believer, like when I got sober, that take what you like and leave the rest, you know? Develop your own sense of spiritual belief, and that's what's always worked for me. So prayer for me is for me. It's not for anybody else. It's not to follow the rules and make sure that I'm doing the right, you know, it's not like, well, I don't want to call it any specific religion, but it's not like I'm doing it because I'm told to do it at a certain time or a certain way or with a certain piece of jewelry or whatever, you know, like for me, and I know that there are people, like I have friends of mine that are like, I love the rosary, like I love to do the rosary, and that's great, like that works for them, right? But like that's not for me. And so for me, prayer is personal, prayer is for me, and I can write whatever, I can write a prayer myself. I can edit a prayer any way that I want to. I can take out words and whatever. I have a lot of meditation books that are very highly religious, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but Phaedra Parks was on the Ultimate Girls Trip in the Brookshires, and with Dorinda's house, and at one point she brought out a meditation book that a friend of hers, I think, wrote that she really likes, and I loved the meditation that she wrote, or that she read in there. She read it to the whole table. Basically it was about, like, you know, not feeding into, you know, negativity and things, and I loved it. So I got online and I bought it. It's very religious. It has a biblical quote at the beginning of each of it, and I just, you know, sometimes I read it and sometimes I skip it, and sometimes I edit through my head as I'm reading it and whatever, but it doesn't mean that I have to like be like, okay, I can't read this, you know, like I can edit through it, you know, and take what I like and leave the rest. And that's what I would recommend to you. See it as positive affirmations, you know. So thank you so much I spoke about this a little bit longer than I wanted to. But I wanted to give a very simple response to that. But thank you for that question. I think it's a great question. You know, I think a lot of people are like, well, I'd like to have prayer in my life. The other thing is that, like, you know, meditation, I think, is seen as this kind of like Eastern religious idea that we have kind of transformed it into this like Buddhist idea of meditation. And for a long time, I believed that, you know, until it was explained to me that when like the Basic Text of Recovery was written, that their translation of meditation at that time meant deep thought. And so meditation doesn't have to mean, you know, getting into this transcendent state, right? Like through like a Buddhist belief. Like it can mean deep thought. It can mean just meditating and having deep thoughts about something. So just sitting out on your front porch and, you know, thinking about the world and gratitude and what you've been given, or sitting, you know, walking your dog and just thinking about those things, or just walking to yourself, or as you lay in bed at night before you drift off to sleep and just thinking about all that you've been given and things like that. That's meditative in itself, right? It doesn't have to be a process. I mean, I can remember way back in the day reading all these books like The Tao of Pooh and, you know, how to meditate, basics of meditation, and like I wanted to like reach this state of transcendence, you know, and like I just never could get it. Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious watching my videos. I have a really hard time sitting still for even 5 seconds. It's something I've practiced through the years, you know, but I'm never going to be the Buddhist monk that sits there for an hour and just has total, I mean, that's not who I am, right? But that doesn't mean that I can't meditate. I can't get into deep spaces of thought. And sometimes meditating or having deep thought about something slows me down and allows me to sit and be still and be silent. And so over the years, I have learned to be able to do that and just kind of clear my head of any thought. And it starts with deeply thinking about things, and then it goes to not thinking about anything and just sitting and just being part of the universe. And to me, that's a lot of what meditation is about, a stillness, you know? So thank you so much, because I think it's a really great question. Okay, the next question I wanted to talk about was, somebody said to me, could you please talk about getting over heartbreak? I'm 2 months into being broken up with after 12 years in a relationship, and I'm struggling. And the reason I want to read this is, and I was kind of smiling to myself, because I can remember my ex and I, we got together and then we broke up and we were apart like for 3 months and then we got back together. And I can remember that was during the time that I've shared this in a lot of videos, that I had the conversation, I believe it was at that time, with my mom, and she said none of us are promised a relationship. I always think I was between relationships, but I think it was at that time. No, I think that was before that. At that time, I had a conversation with my mom, and we were talking about prayer, and she said, I said something, I've been praying on this relationship, and she said, what do you mean you've been praying on this relationship? And I said, well, I've been praying, you know, that to God that make this relationship work. And she said, oh, sweetheart, she was like, that's not how prayer works. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, you know, when we pray to things, when we focus on things spiritually, it's about guidance and understanding and compassion and whatever. It's not like, God is not, like, if you believe in a higher power, God's not like a wish granter, you know? Do I believe that God comforts and, you know, does miraculous things? I do. I believe that. Do I believe that God, you know, is a wish granter or a genie? No, I don't believe that. And that was really helpful for me when she said that, you know, that like, instead pray for understanding, and instead pray for strength to get through difficult times. Instead, you know, pray for understanding of what's going on in this situation, or compassion towards this other person, or forgiveness, or whatever, you know. And it really kind of changed my whole direction of that. But we broke up and we were apart for like 3 months, and then we got back together, and that was really, really hard for me. And then when we broke up, both of my past 2 breakups, I mean, I dated people here and there before that, but I call those because those were long-term relationships. So my first relationship, that was about 4.5 years. My second relationship was about 6.5 years. Both of those, when I broke up, I literally, like, I didn't feel like I could move forward. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know that I have really any great advice for it. I think what I learned through both of those experiences is just to put one foot in front of the other. You know, there were days where I didn't feel like I could get out of bed. There were days that I felt like, what's the point of getting out of bed? I think part of it was that I so defined myself by those relationships, not just the fact that I missed those people. I think the other thing was those people were such, not just romantic partners of mine, but they were such dear friends of mine, especially my ex and I. I mean, my ex and I had really become good friends and had fallen out of like romantic love to some degree. And so I felt like when we broke up, I mean, I'm telling you, at like 2 months, I was calling him up on the phone, begging him to get back together, and he said, you wanted out of this relationship, you know, let me get over you. And I needed him. I mean, if he had come back over, we would be probably, I don't know, together in a very unhealthy relationship today, you know? Unhealthy because we just were not romantically in love anymore, but I felt like I needed him. I felt dependent on him, you know? And he was a great person. But he wasn't my forever person. I hate that term, but like, he wasn't who I wanted to be with. I didn't feel passionate about him, you know? I've been with my husband now for 12 years married almost, and 15 years together, and he still walks across the room, and I'm like, damn, like that's my man, that's my husband, you know? Like, and I feel desire for him and passion and love, and, you know, and he makes me cry and he makes me laugh, and that's how I always wanted to feel with a partner, and I still feel that way. Yes, he makes me angry sometimes and he pisses me off and we argue, but that's part of all of it, you know? But I still have passion for my husband, and I'm grateful for that, you know? In working in therapy, when Alex and I were going through a really bad situation or bad time in our relationship, and I thought we were going to get divorced, and my counselor, my therapist said to me at the time, this was our past therapist, said, you know, like, if you and Alex broke up and got divorced, would you be okay? And I've shared this before many times, and I said, no, I wouldn't be okay at all. And he said, never, like, you wouldn't eventually be able to move on? And I thought about it, and I mean, we went back and forth for a while, but I was like, eventually I'd be okay. He said, so you'd be okay, like, you don't need him to survive. And I was like, no, like, eventually I would be okay. Like, I'd be heartbroken, I would be upset, but eventually I would be okay, right? And he said, so you don't need Alex to survive, like, you choose to have him in your life. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, like, I choose to have him in my life, right? Well, sometimes people don't choose for us to be in their life anymore. Sometimes we don't choose to have people in our lives anymore. And it's hard, you know, because we're so used to having that person. And I've always said, like, one of the hardest things about a breakup is that, like, 2 seconds before it happens, that person's everything in your life. And 2 seconds after it happens, it's like you don't even know them anymore and they're not in your life. how can somebody be such a huge part of your life and 2 seconds later they're not part of your life at all anymore? It's why I tell people, like, with your exes, don't follow them on social media, don't look at who they're dating, don't look at what they're doing, because it's hard. I think it's easier, to be honest with you, because you're grieving the loss of that relationship. I think it's easier, honestly, in discussion of grief, and somebody passes away, because you know that they're not continuing to go on there and live a good life. Like, you know where they're at, right? Like, you can go visit them and take flowers to their grave site and stuff like that. But like, when you break up with somebody, or you have a relationship or a friendship that falls apart, it's like, you can get on Instagram and see them with their arm around somebody else, or out having a good time and whatever, and it's so painful, because what you realize is, I'm not part of that. You know, people say to me all the time, well, like, I mean, I was part of their families and whatever, you know, like, you have their phone numbers. You don't need to follow those people on social media, and you're not part of their life anymore, you know, unless they call you up and whatever, you know. And my mom did a very good job through the years, because my dad's sisters would, you know, send her Christmas cards and things like that, but she was never, like, real close with them after. Like, we would go see my one aunt, because I was close with my aunt, at the fair every year, and when I was a real little kid. But through the years, like, my mom started distancing herself from that and whatever. They all came to my mom's funeral, and it meant the world to me, you know. But no, my mom didn't have close relationships with them. She knew her place, and she knew that her place was that she was no longer Mrs. Monn, you know, and that my stepmother was, and that my stepmother's place was to be close to them, and she wasn't that person anymore, and she knew that, right? And as hard as that is to hear, that's the truth, right? And so, you know, I think the best advice that I can give you on how to get over a heartbreak is just to put one foot in front of the other and allow yourself to feel it. Listen to a lot of sad music, watch a lot of sad movies until you cry your eyes out, until you can't cry anymore. I don't really know what to tell you, you know, like, and you're grieving the loss is what you are, but you're gonna be okay. That's the truth, is you're gonna be okay. I was, I have been, I am. Other people are. You're going to get to a point where it hurts a little bit less and a little bit less each and every day. You know, the same where it's like, it takes twice as long to get over somebody that you've been with them, which means for you it'll be 24 years. Don't buy into that. That's total crap, right? And don't get into another relationship. Allow yourself to be out of a relationship for 6 to 12 months and work on yourself and be by yourself and enjoy loving yourself again by yourself, right? Because I think, like, I was so dependent. Like, I didn't know who I was if I didn't have a man in my life validating me, loving me, desiring me, you know, making me feel good enough to be alive, you know. And what I realized by spending some time alone was, I'm just damn good enough by myself. I don't need somebody. Now, I choose to have my partner in my life today. I choose to have my husband, and I'm very grateful for him. But I don't need him to survive. I feel blessed to have him. We choose to be in each other's life, but I don't need him. I'm not dependent on him. And that was a lesson that took me a long time to learn. And you can learn it too. But you got to put one foot in front of the other and just feel your pain. You know, like that, when people ask me, like, you know, like, oh, I've lost this or I've lost that, like, how do I get over the grieving process? I don't know. For me, it was just allowing myself to feel the pain and sit in it for a while. Not every day. You know, I'd say to myself sometimes, okay, I'm gonna cry over my mom for the next half an hour and watch, you know, some movie that makes me sad about her, think of my mom. But then I'm gonna allow myself to enjoy the rest of my day. I'm not gonna sit in it, you know, and I'm not gonna, you know, look at pictures every single day and just stay stuck in that. You know, I'm going to allow myself to have a life and move forward and put one foot in front of the other, and eventually things will get better. Promise me. Promise me. As somebody that's gone through 2 devastating breakups, I mean, that were civil breakups as well, you will get through this. You will, and you will be okay, you know? And I love you so much, and I wish you guys all the best, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.